Welcome, everybody. This is the City of Indian Rock Speech regular City Commission meeting. This is Tuesday, May 13th, 2025. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner King? Here. Commissioner Bigelow?
Here.
Commissioner Bond? Vice Mayor Commissioner Wilson? Present. Mayor Commissioner Hausberg? Here. Thank you. We'd like to start with the presentations. Report of the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, please. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Corporal Esposito, Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. I am here today to go over the monthly report for April. I understand that everyone has had a copy of this, and I'm here to answer any questions or go over any part of the report if anyone does. Are there any questions for the report?
Does anybody have any questions about the police report for April? No questions? Thank you.
I have a question for the sheriff on the report.
Very good, sir.
There was an incident over at 478 Harbor Drive South in regards to a party that was going on over there on Sunday. There was also fireworks involved. Can you tell me what the incident was after the call was made over?
So from what I understand, that particular incident was a Airbnb that was being used for gender reveal party. Apparently, one or more, I'm not sure the exact number of fireworks were set off to reference, a boy or a girl. And our deputy responded. The fireworks were not being done in the deputy's presence. The deputy spoke with the homeowner as well as the person who was at the party and advised them of the ordinance violation.
Was there any citations issued over there?
There were not, no. Fireworks are something where that's an ordinance violation that has to be done in the presence of a deputy. Otherwise, a citation cannot be issued unless it's done in the presence.
When I had called the sheriff's department about that incident out there, the responding police officer had called me and talked to me, and she was reminding me about the ordinances, what the ordinances were.
Yes, sir.
And all the information she had gave me was incorrect.
Okay.
So what kind of training do the sheriffs have prior to coming to duty out here in this area? Do they rotate them every 6 months, 30 days, 90 days?
We do have a bid system every 6 months. Deputies have the opportunity to move to different areas every 6 months. Deputies are versed in the areas of the cities. If they are working in the cities, they're advised where all the ordinance violations are, all the contract city duties. They're advised how to handle all of those. So every deputy that works the city should be well versed in all the ordinance violations.
All right, they weren't, but this one will let you know. Thank you.
The deputy that was filling in that day was the relief part, was not assigned total duties to the city of Indian Rocks. That's why I should a little off on the information.
Thank you.
Greg, would you like to respond to that commentary?
I would love to respond to that. After the event and the information that was sent to the city, along with the photographs of the box, of the fireworks box, we cited the property owner for the violation, and they have a court date.
Okay.
Thank you. let's move on to the report of the Pinellas Suncoast Fire and Rescue District. Good evening.
Good evening, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Ken Grant. I'm the new fire chief. I'm gonna say that for about a year.
Welcome.
I grew up on a barrier island south of here, Longboat Key. My parents had a little 9-unit motel on the beach, and that's where I grew up. So like, we took a cut and paste of where I grew up and pasted it out here. You know, actually, I feel like I am home. I worked my first 13 years on the fire department on the barrier island. So, and then I went down to Key Biscayne, which is not barrier island, off of Miami, and worked the rest of my fire service career. So I'm at home out here, and I feel home, and I'm honored to be here.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. For our report, we had 58 emergency calls in this last month in this district, IRC. Sometimes people wonder what our folks do when they're not running those 58 calls. And so since the beginning of the year, they spent 7,000 hours in training, in fire training, or all hazards training, we call it, and 160 hours in emergency medical training. So that's what they do with their time. On calls, take care of equipment. By way of sort of facilities, we actually closed. So I'm very concerned about, our district covers up to the border of Clearwater on the island. It covers all the way down to the Reddington. And we also cover a piece of the mainland. As you may or may not know, we're an independent fire district. So we actually have our own elected board and report directly to the public. That's who I report to. But we're very concerned, and we've heard from our constituents about coverage in the northern part up here and north. So we actually closed, I think today is this Thursday, but it might be the next week, on property up here, which is here at the Church of the Isle. It's out, we're buying a piece of the parking lot so that we can build a quick response fire and EMS station up closer to everybody up here. So we're excited about that. The construction process and everything takes time, and so my orders, some of my first orders is to put a temporary base up here, and we were talking to the Bel Air Shores Town Hall about basing a fire truck up there in addition to what we have down at 27th, probably in the Narrows. Because I want to get a presence up here sooner. And so my goal is October 1st that we'll be operating a fire engine, which is also advanced life support capable. So you can get 3 people on that fire engine that have paramedic training and paramedic equipment. And the key is to get them to the person that needs it. We're very focused on when somebody's having the worst day of their life, that's when they call us. And so we're going to be there with the equipment we need, with the people we need to take care of them. So moving south, our station 27 was damaged like many others in the hurricane. And so we're still waiting on mitigation of that facility. We have walls that are coming off and out of the station we're operating under. Our furthest south station is down at the border of Reddington, the Reddingtons. It's right on the border, and we operate out of there. You may see the fire truck. It's at an old bank. So it sits outside, but it's out on the southern end. And their facility has been completely redone since the hurricane. So those guys, that's actually where I want to move my office. We look out over the coastal water. It's like a great place to work. And then our mainland station, which is Station 28, which is in sort of the heart of Oakhurst. That station is scheduled to be demolished in August, late summer, and then we're building a completely new facility, which will be hardened, and it'll be able to be where we can go during the storm as an emergency operations center. So I think that's mostly what's going on. Any questions?
No, I just want to tell you, I've been hearing some really good things about your fire. Your fire crew has told me what an awesome guy you are, and how easy you are to work with, so be nice to them. They talk great about you.
Thank you. My mantra is we take care of people in their most worst day of their life, and we take care of the people that take care of, so we take care of our own people.
Yeah.
And so, that is, my single focus is really taking care of people. Thank you, though, for that.
Okay, now we move on to the funds part, the presentation of the annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year ended September 30th, 2024.
Yes, definitely the highlight presentation of the year, Mayor, I recognize that. Jeff is going to go through all 93 pages tonight with the commission. I'm just kidding. Jeff is the audit partner for our independent audit firm, and even if he wasn't required to do what he's about to do, I think he'd want to do it, but he's going to give a brief presentation, hitting some of the highlights from the September 30th, 2024 audit. And then later on in the commission agenda, under consent, the commission will be asked to accept that document due to the record.
Thanks, Dan. Good evening. Again, I always start with just first thanking the commission for allowing us to serve you. We work for the board, so we are keenly aware of that. So again, just thank you for allowing us to serve you as now as being former CESARs. But so with that, I'll get right into it. First, you should have a handout with our required communications. As your auditor, we are required to communicate certain things to governance. It's a pretty standard driven letter. I won't go into too much detail other than just highlight a few things. Basically, it covers our responsibility under the audit, your responsibility as governance. It also discusses what we kind of consider the key estimates and key disclosures in the ACFR, that large document you have in front of you. I'm happy to report there was no transactions that were not reported in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. No disagreements with management, no issues. Also important to note there was no corrected misstatements, meaning there was no adjustments to the trial balance that was provided to us. I think that's really important because I'm sure as you, every month you request financial information, that information can be relied upon. So with that, that kind of covers our communications, and I'll go right into our reports. These will be repetitive, but when it comes to the audit, kind of no news is good news, so I'll apologize for the being repetitive. But first is our independent auditor's report. That is our report on whether your financial statements are materially correct. The city had once again an unmodified opinion. That is the highest level of assurance you can receive that your financial statements are correct. The next report is report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance. Now, part of our audit, we don't render opinion on internal controls. It's really helped us plan our audit, meaning if as our controls over disbursements or payroll, if we noted issues, we would adjust our audit plan, but we don't render opinion. However, though, if we noted any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, we would communicate those to you. And again, this was a clean report, no findings, no issues noted. Our next report, which is actually new for the year, you did meet the $750,000 threshold for a federal single audit due to your Corona Relief fiscal recovery funds. But since you don't have other significant grants, you're allowed to do kind of a watered down single audit version, just an examination report, which really just focused on was the money spent on allowable activities and allowable costs. Again, no findings or no issues with that report. Our next report is the independent accountant's reports as it relates to compliance with Florida statutes on investments. Again, no findings, no issues noted there. Now, our last report is the Auditor General required management letter. This letter covers several things. First, if the city was in any kind of financial condition, emergency, or any negative trends, we would communicate that here. Again, the city is very strong financially, so no issues there. And if we had any other things that we felt necessary to communicate to governance, we would communicate in this letter. But again, this was a clean report, no findings, no issues noted. So I think the overall summary from the audit, again, once again, a very clean audit. Dan and his team was excellent to work with, and I think the reports speak for themselves on the results of the audit. So just some real high-level financial highlights. This is your general fund, which you should be accustomed to seeing your main operating fund. Really pretty consistent with prior year. You had a net change in fund balance of $8.8 0.8 million compared to 0.9 last year. Your unassigned fund balance as a part of the total expenditures is very comparable to 128% compared to 124, which, I'm sure with, the hurricanes that hit at 9:30, having that very healthy reserve, you probably really saw the benefit of having that. So that reserve probably is not that amount now, but I think that, just really shows the importance of having a healthy reserve. And then lastly, just looking at budget, again, really comparable. Your total revenues were about 0.7 million higher than budget. Half of that was just higher interest income, which makes sense. You typically are a little bit conservative on your investment income. So that really drives half of those results of being over budget. And then your expenditures were 0.1 million under budget, so right in line with budget. So overall, which again resulted in that positive fund balance of 8 million. So with that, if there's any questions on the audit or any questions on the document, I'd be more than happy to answer those for you.
Does anybody have any questions on the audit? No. Okay. No questions, thank you. We're going to move on to the public comments. This is a 3-minute time limit per speaker. Any member of the audience may come forward, give their name and address, and state any comment or concern that they have regarding any matter over which the City Commission has control, excluding agenda items. All statements made to the City Commission shall be made to the City Commission as a whole, not directed to any individual City Commission member, and no personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks shall be permitted. No speaker shall be interrupted, and no debate shall occur between the speaker and the City Commission. I'd also like to mention my new strategy. It's called kindness. We're going to be kind to one another tonight.
And don't be embarrassed.
Thank you. Who'd like to speak? Hi, Wesley.
Hi there. Could you take one of these and pass it? Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
For those who don't know me, I'm the Reverend Wesley Snedeker. I'm blessed to be the pastor here at Church of the Isles, and we've been blessed to host City Commission meetings for the past few months. I am here because local volunteers have authored a letter and signed it and asked me to read it, as I did last May to the City Commission regarding Pride Month. So it's an honor to stand before you again with an invitation to declare June Pride Month for the Indian Rocks Beach community. We bring you this letter after our city commissioners made similar proclamations in each of the last 2 years. These proclamations were a welcome show of respect and support by the Indian Rocks Beach community for our LGBTQ+ residents and visitors. Thank you for your willingness to stand with the queer folks and community in the past, and we are privileged to ask you again to do so this year. So Pride Month is a celebration of LGBTQ+ progress and a commemoration of the Stonewall Uprising in 1969, when police raided a gay bar in New York City, which became the tipping point for the gay liberation movement. Now in 2025, while marriage equality has been legal for a decade, and more LGBTQ+ people feel comfortable being out, their rights are still not a given. There is still much fear, much hatred, and censoring of the LGBTQ+ community in our nation and in our state. To proclaim June as Pride Month is to show our residents and visitors that all people are welcome and safe in our community, and to establish Indian Rocks Beach as a city that respects the dignity and rights of all people, and including our LGBTQ+ residents, visitors, allies, and neighbors. Therefore, we ask the City of Indian Rocks Beach again to proclaim June Pride Month and consider taking the following 2 actions. If the IRB library is open again, to display LGBTQ+ authors and books in the library, to make a little display, and to announce the Pride Month proclamation at the June 10 City Commission meeting next month. Thank you for your consideration. And that's signed by residents, friends, and folks who attend religious services here on IRB. Thank you.
Thank you, Wesley. Who else would like to speak this evening? Hi, Beth.
Hello, Elizabeth Flynn, 914 Harbor House Drive. First, as a citizen of Indian Rock Beach, I want to say thank you to Randy and to Greg for all of their hard work and dedication over the years. I may not have understood everything you were trying to tell us, but thank you so much for trying to keep us informed. Second, as a board member of the Friends of Indian Rock Beach Library, I would like to share who the Friends are. Our purpose is to promote the Indian Rock Beach Library, and no, it won't be open in June. This is to improving the library facility and to provide volunteer personnel to the staff library. Our bylaws were signed May 14, 1974, just one day short of 51 years ago. Last fall, on November 16th, would have been the 50th anniversary of the library opening its doors to the public. Pre-Lee in Milton, the library occupied 2,300 square foot of the northwest corner of the Civic Auditorium. It had over 19,000 books, with nearly 2,000 library card holders, over 15 volunteers, and a city librarian. This year, while waiting on permits, etc., we've been focused on promoting the Friends and the library by continuing community outreach. We've been cleaning up the little libraries at City Hall, 4th Avenue, 12th Avenue, participating in Green Fest, conducting an Earth Day event at the Nature Preserve with the Greentown Kids, and launching a Facebook page. We are working with the city on plans for the renovation of the library and for additional little libraries in the city. We also want to thank Hillary and Janet for attending our annual meeting. Thank you for your participation. Please check us out on Facebook, or if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me to become a friend. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Who else would like to speak this evening?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Despite the fact that I'm looking down at the agenda, I don't have any prepared remarks. My name is Ron Cristaldi. I have owned a condominium on the 1900 Beach Trail here since 2009. I'm a president and CEO of a law firm based in Tampa called Shoemaker. We're the largest law firm in the Dade County region here. And honestly, I just drove over from work tonight. I love this community. I've been a part of the community for a long time. Just to thank the commission. I know that you all don't get thank yous very much, and you probably take a lot of arrows, but this community service that you all have committed to is super important. I sit on the board of and vice chair of one of our state university boards, and I'm a former commissioner of the Charter Review Commission in the city of Tampa, and so I've sat in your chair before. I know it's difficult, and I just want to say thank you. I appreciate as someone who frequents this community as a second home and is property to be here for all that you all are doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Who else would like to speak this evening? Hey, Don.
Don House, 2104 Beach Trail. So if I take 65 steps up the back of my house, y'all might have to take 75, I have long ways, but I pass no fewer than 20 short-term rentals, and that does not count the ones by the month. And that's just on my street. But that's not what I'm here about. If I go up the front of my house and take those same 65 steps, it's horrendous. There's little kids chasing seagulls. The seagulls are squawking. The little kids are yelling. There's people out there throwing footballs, baseballs. They're playing soccer. Everything's flying through the air. You know how much watch you off the waves? I mean, you can get hurt with one of those things. And it's just horrible what's happening on the beach. And they're screaming and everything. And this doesn't even count the people that are working on that perfect beach bog, either doing the yoga or tanning or trying to paint something or whatever. It's just horrible. In the past week, there's been no fewer than 2,500 people within my 65 steps from the front of my house. I don't know how many of them are murderers, rapists, and pedophiles. Murderers, rapists, and pedophiles. Oh my. Murderers, and rapists, and pedophiles. Oh my. Okay. I hope you know that was not true. I had, in the past 50 years, that's 50 years on the beach, we called law enforcement twice. There's great people. I talked to a lot of them. We have a lot of fun with them. The other day, I was trying to get some sod, and the guy, the sod driver, he spoke about as much English as I did Spanish. All I knew was aquí, and I said, un momento. And so I went running down the beach, and it took me 3 people to find someone that spoke Spanish, and I got my sod. A lot of those people are probably saying they're short-term rentals. So here's how we deal with the short-term rental issue. First of all, history. I don't know if any of y'all even remember or even know, but Indian Rocks Beach used to have its own police department. We got rid of it, and now these fine people in green are handling that stuff. Indian Rocks Beach used to have its own sewer department. We sold that dog, and now it's handled by the county. Indian Rocks Beach used to have its own building department, and that is now handled by the county. You know what? The county now has a short-term rental ordinance. It's time for this city to get out of the short-term rental regulation business. Get rid of this frickin' ordinance. Have the county do it. The county has an ordinance that I think might be pretty comparable. I understand. I got and it's pretty comparable to what the city is trying to accomplish. And we could let the county take care of it. Get out of the business, get out of the lawsuit business. I know that we may not have the cash cow that some people thought we might. I don't know how that's working for us, but let's get out of the short-term regulation business. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Don. Who else would like to speak this evening?
It's a hard act to follow. John Fansfield, 448 Howard Drive now. I actually agree with Don. That would be nice, but that Pinellas ordinance only goes for the unincorporated portions of Pinellas. It doesn't. It's a pretty good ordinance. We fought for it. I'm glad that they did that. But really what I came here is to thank the commission and particularly Hillary for getting together to get the RFP for a new city manager and city attorney going so expeditiously. I appreciate that. In the process of hiring these new people, I think it deserves a comment that it does a disservice to find somebody good if in the press and in public people are saying that it would be difficult to find somebody because the town is such a mess. I think a better message would be saying that there are hundreds of concerned residents that spend thousands of hours just trying to save their city. I think any good manager would be happy to work in a place with such committed people. And yeah, we're not against all SDRs. We're looking just for good regulations for the SDRs. A majority of the current commissioners don't live in single-family residential areas, so you might not see firsthand what's going on.
John, can you pick up, please?
Sure. Myself and my neighbors moved to a place we chose to that was one of the most peaceful, safe, desirable, charming neighborhoods. And large portions of it have become completely intolerable. I'll just give you a short list of the people, the friends and neighbors that I've lost. That would be Flash and Joe, they have an award for a wonderful job that they did on their house. It's Bonnie, who you've heard here before, her husband. 2 years they suffered, they couldn't take it anymore. Winston and his young family with all the people screaming and yelling at them. And now a friend of 26 years, Lois, she was right next to me. She's sandwiched between 2 huge transient lodges that had the explosions and the pink smoke, which you might have seen on national news. So I'm just saying that you as commissioners would be great, particularly for the new commissioner, to be able to tell them exactly how many short-term rentals there are in the city and how many are operating illegally, and every month to report on that and the new ones coming in there. That would help prepare the new city manager for the job he has to do. And we certainly welcome somebody who's up to that task. You're you best wishes in finding somebody. Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, John. Who else would like to speak this evening?
Good evening. Good evening. Kathleen Major, 439 Harbor Drive South, 29 years. I'd like to begin by thanking each and every one of you for your service. I know it's oftentimes a thankless job. Many times you are in perils and deputies for you to deal with. I say thank you and may God bless you. From reading public media and addressing social media, it's come to my attention that where I live, I am one of those residents in the north area of the city. And people such as me, who have H&H, homes not hotels, signs in our yards, has become embarrassment of some sort. I don't see it that way. I see it as my expression of my First Amendment constitutional rights. And if I have done something wrong, I would invite the law authorities to please bring that to my attention, because I do respect the Constitution and the law. Once again, thank you for your service. I will stand by my commitment to express my First Amendment rights. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Who else would like to speak this evening?
My name is Joe Mulling, 461 20th Avenue, and I'm having a lot of difficulty, both my husband and I, getting out of 20th Avenue because there are two stop signs. I think one is at Bay Boulevard and the other one, of course, at Gulf Boulevard. And mostly at the stop signs, when people park, I don't know if there's a minimum that they have to clear from the stop sign or not, but whether it's landscapers or repairmen or just people parking, they're so close to the stop sign on both sides of the street that people don't know who goes first, where to move, oncoming traffic or whatnot. The other concern, mostly at Gulf Boulevard, is that it's very hard to see traffic turning into 20th Avenue, and it's hard to see pedestrians, cyclists, and so on. And everybody thinks they have the right of way, even though the crosswalk is a couple yards away with a blinking light, because the street goes straight across to the beach. It's more convenient and people use it. More than once, we have avoided accidents. You're looking for traffic side to side, and up comes a cyclist who thinks he has the right of way out of nowhere. You looked here, it was clear, and all of a sudden, there they are, walking, the same thing. Instead of stopping to see if you have seen them and walk around the back, they walk in front of you. We have the Plumley condominiums there. The bushes go right to the sidewalk, and they are so full, you don't have any warning whatsoever. So what I've resorted to doing is if I'm going south, I go to 19th. If I'm going north, I go to 21st, because those corners are nice and clear, and I feel safe turning out. But I've seen, I think it was in Bel Air, and I'm not sure, but I think they had like stop signs for the pedestrians. If they would stop and at least look. I mean, I know it would be our fault if we hit them, but I wouldn't want to live with it, and I wouldn't want to injure someone. Could we put on the sidewalk, stop and look? Or a little, I know they had little signs for the pedestrians right on the sidewalk, stop and look. And so if there was something we can do about that, I'd appreciate it. For the pedestrians, cyclists, or whoever, and also how far away from the stop signs do cars park, or are they able to park? Is it legal to park? So that people can get to the stop sign safely and pass each other, at least to a point where if there are other parked cars on the street, which they are at this time with repair people, that they can go around each other safely.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak this evening?
208. I spoke at the last meeting, which ended up having me be escorted out from a resident that was harassing me. So I appreciate you taking control of that. And actually at that point, I wanted to say to the attorney that I was just getting up to talk about, because I felt like everybody in the audience was not hearing your directive and was not understanding your directive, and more just very like, I hate SDRs, and that's all. And I wanted them to open up their mind on what I thought he was trying to say in the best interest of the city. I also love IRB just as much as everybody else, and I got up that day and I said that I have friends that are residents, a lot of friends that are residents, and a lot of people and neighbors, and they don't come out here because they feel like there's going to be a target on their back. And I was happy enough to convince them to come tonight, because this city is important, and I do feel like, whether you feel like it or not, that it has been controlled by 5 people, and they are ruling everything that goes on. And when I sat through these meetings, and I heard the comments come out of their mouth, like, quote unquote, what do our kids need to do, carry a gun now in Indian Rocks Beach, I'm just flabbergasted, because what I see and what my friends see and what our neighbors see that are residents is nothing like that. We ride up and down these streets multiple times a day. We see people waving, and yes, there was a gender reveal, and yes, maybe it was more than that was supposed to be. But look at other cities. Other cities have things that happen, and it's not, oh, let's burn down the city because STRs are bad. It happens. Like, bad things, some things happen, right? We gotta take it for what it is, we gotta deal with it, we move on. It doesn't mean all STRs are bad. It doesn't mean that owner is bad. I just think things have gotten so out of control, and it makes me sad, because the reason I came here to IRB was because of the camaraderie and going on and seeing people play, you know, walking around in bathing suits just like the old days. It feels like old school beach town, you know, and things are gonna change. You don't have, you know, those 80-year-old people that are sitting in their houses. It's just not gonna always be like that. Now there's gonna be crying babies, and because a new family came in next door, that's annoying. But, you know, but it is what it is. And I just thank you for taking a stand, because I think for way too long, residents, not only residents, other residents in this IRB, but STR owners have gotten a bad rap, and it is not as bad as the 5 people that come up here 5 times during one commission meeting.
Ms. Harris?
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Hi, good evening.
My name is Teresa Brunez, I'm 366 Avenue. It seems like a lot of people are talking still about the issue that should have been solved, I think, some time ago. We've been here many times. Sometimes we have felt signals, and both sides have been very concerned what's going on. Obviously, residents want something totally different than short-term rentals. There is just no way you can put that together. It's quite obvious that residents want the neighborhoods, they want the security, they want the peace and quiet, they want the neighborhoods, they want something that they had bought and wanted and had it. That was stolen from us. I understand things are changing, but this has to be resolved. This cannot continue. Either you people decide on the rules and regulations, or somebody else has to decide, because we cannot have this chaos going on there. Houses are rented out, they're not supposed to. Non-living spaces are being rented out. People are making a lot of money, a lot of inconvenience, noise, and unsafe things in the neighborhood. It's not only north, few people up north, but it's not only a few people south, or middle. It's all residents want the same thing. We want residents' property, we want residents' community, safety, and everything that goes with it. And short-term will never give us. And that's always a big problem. We should have been solving it. We've been coming to the city. We're tired of coming to the city and asking you to do something that needs to be done. We want our community back. We want our safe. And our neighbors back. Not strangers, not somebody that we don't know, what they're doing, what they have to do, what kind of people are they. It's totally not like a small city that residential. And I believe there should be residential area and business. Of course, each city is entitled to have homes. Give us our residents and give to those people their rentals area. Let's split the area. Let residents live in the residential area. Let business people live in business area where they can do what they are entitled to do, what they should be doing in those areas. But you cannot have everything done in every place. There's a ladies' room and a men's room. Not everybody goes everywhere. There is always designation for different people do different things for different reasons. There are schools for babies and adults, but they don't go together, do they? We separate them and keep them separate. It makes sense or nonsense. I thought they should be able to do that. I guess I overestimated it.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak this evening?
Hi, Kathleen Mullen, 481 Harbor Drive South. I just want to remind everybody that we are now in the seasonal manatee zone in our area, in the waterways. We are in the slow minimum wake from April 1st through October 31st. This is in the majority of Indian Rocks Beach, as well as other surrounding communities, which means when you come off the Coastal Zone, you are to come off the plane, and you're still going to have to proceed in the minimum wake, with a minimum wake, 5 to 10 miles per hour. This is a federally and state protected requirement. There are a few places, just a couple, in the city in which you can enjoy water sports, but we lost that ability due to a change with FWC for the rest of the majority of the city. But there's a good reason for it. We have grass flats off of our dock between Harbor Drive South and 20th Avenue. It's a large area, submerged most of the time, but there's a big patch of seagrass that's there. And we see manatees there every day during the summer. And a couple of years ago, we saw a herd of about 25 of them all at once. The boats that come off Leader Coastal are coming right next to this area. And we see the pictures of the boat stripes on the back of the manatees. So they are hoping that you will come off planes so that they can eat and feed quietly and be protected. About 10 years ago, we watched a wave runner hit a baby manatee that was feeding with its mother on those flats. The baby stopped moving, and we brought the baby over to our dock. It had been killed by the wave runner boat strike. So it's not always the propeller, it's also anything that can hit it and also kill it. So I'm asking residents and visitors to this area to please be aware of this law. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak this evening? Anyone else? All right. I'm going to close the public comment and move on to the reports of the city attorney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First things first, we're here now at May 13, 2025. Ordinarily, I'd be prepared to provide you with an update of the legislative session, but true to 2025, that didn't happen the way it was supposed to. Ordinarily, when we near the end of session, we're reporting on the bills that the House and Senate have passed, and the question remains, as it did last year, for example, will the governor sign certain bills or not, and wait on that. But I'm able to tell you what's sort of coming down. I can highlight a few things that have failed, a few notable things that have passed. But before I get to that, I want to make clear the legislative session has been extended. It did not end as it should have in the first Friday in May. Instead, by joint resolution, they extended the session beginning yesterday, May 12th, to June 6th. In the last week of session, one of the key elements being the budget, the House and Senate had not agreed on the budget, which happens sometimes, although this year the chasm between the House and the Senate, based on figures I last reported, is a 3 comma chasm of a couple $2 billion in their differences in approach. So whereas there's usually some division between the branches of government, the legislative branch has not found harmony on that. It was reported today that the House and Senate had talks of a joint resolution to extend the session not just to June 6th, but all the way to, I believe, June 30th. The Senate, it is reported today, rejected that extension to June 30. They still have not found a conference version of the bill, meaning one that's been harmonized, of the budget bill. The current extended session is limited to 16 bills, including budget. So we'll see what, if anything, comes out of that. For those unfamiliar with the legislative process, a bill has to pass the House and the Senate in identical forms, and then the governor has to sign it by, traditionally it happens by July 1, there is no set day. So we're operating with a bunch of questions, and because of the budget divide, the legislative enactments hang in limbo. Those are being used as chess pieces, or can be used as chess pieces in the legislative negotiation process. So the House has versions of bills, the Senate has its own version, they go online, and now they're using those as the negotiations as the budget continues. So that's where we stand on the legislative session. Stay tuned. Beyond that, some notable bills that failed as it concerns local governments. Senate Bill 1570 that included increases to sovereign immunity appears to have failed altogether and is not on anything to be continued in joint session. That was a bill, for those unfamiliar, when you sue a local government in tort for a tort injury, not constitutional violations or other classes of violations, your maximum recovery against a local government or sovereign is $200,000. It's been that way since roughly 2012 or so. Originally, before that, it was $100,000. There was a proposal to increase that to $1 million and phase that up over the next few years. A lot of concerns for local governments is their carriers had not collected premiums based on those numbers, and local governments had not planned for that kind of exposure to liability. In a version of the bill that was introduced in the House, it actually was retroactive, which would have called into question ongoing litigation. Not necessarily that involving the city, but just personal injury litigation generally. That bill failed. Another bill was a House joint resolution concerning property tax exemptions. The House and Senate, among their divisions in the budget, included some legislative divisions over property taxes, or rather over sales taxes, and also some property tax exemptions. The House joint resolution failed. That said, as we talk about taxes, before I pivot to the past, there's an important discussion going on at the state level about property taxes. Historically, local governments require referendum approval for property tax increases, or not for property tax increases in terms of your NAFRA, but just generally property taxes historically, when put on the ballot, any kind of tax when put on the ballot, generally fails. People rarely vote to increase taxes or keep taxes at the same number. We all want more money in our pocket, wherever we're getting it from. At the governor's level, he's discussed eliminating ad valorem taxes altogether. I've not seen a policy document setting forth how that would work, but that's one proposal. The Florida House Speaker on April 29th, just towards the end of session, somewhat maligned the governor's plan, said it lacked specificity, but has offered 5 proposals and has established a select committee to research these 5 proposals to put them on the ballot as constitutional amendments in 2026. And so the proposed 5 items that the select committee will research and provide sample ballot language for is 1, requiring every city, county, and special district to hold a referendum on the elimination of homestead property taxes. 2, creating a $500,000 homestead property tax exemption for non-school property taxes. That $500,000 exemption would be increased to $1 million for homeowners who are over 65 years of age or who have had a homestead in Florida for over 30 years. 3, authorizing the state legislature to raise the amount of homestead exemption by state statute. Ordinarily, homestead exemptions require ballot approval, and this would seek to eliminate that. Enhancing Florida's assessment limitation caps for homestead and non-homesteaded properties. We could change the homestead assessment cap from 3% per year to 3% every 3 years. For non-homesteaded assessments, we would adjust the cap from 10% per year to 15% every 3 years. And then finally, prohibiting governments from foreclosing on a homesteaded property for unpaid taxes. So these are the 5 proposals being advanced by the House and Joint Select Committee. The reason they're studying them is to, 1, just provide language, but also 2, address the concerns that attend elimination or severe reductions in property taxes. Historically in America, dating all the way back to the Revolution, property has been taxed because it is a fixed asset you can track regardless of who comes and goes. It's in your municipal boundaries. You can address that. When discussions are had about property tax reduction, it's important to note for this community and any other, as this discussion is had, that they are often decoupled from the conversation about spending and services. Everybody wants to remove, nobody talks about how we address the spending and the services. And there are certainly, as in a Doge culture of efficiency, certainly there are cuts that can be made in any operation. You can do anything, incidentally, efficiently. It's not necessarily a policy statement to do something efficiently. You can efficiently create more housing, you can efficiently create more towers, you can efficiently do a number of things. I spoke on this a little bit at the Big C meeting. There's a I find fascinating case study out of Massachusetts in the 1980s of Prop 2.5 that provided that you could only cap property taxes at 2.5% of all the assessed values. So if you had $1 million in assessed values, you could have 25,000, I think is the math on that, dollars in revenue from property taxes. Almost overnight, local government, it passed with flying colors, and local governments found themselves having to shutter libraries and fires, and the way that they ended up closing that gap was through the state lottery. Fascinatingly, Massachusetts lottery is one of the only that is done that goes to municipal budgets, not highways, education, etc. I'm not endorsing that approach. I'm saying the discussion is often had decoupled from spending. There's also, when this comes up, if this comes up, regardless of if it's a House, Senate, or governor's proposal, be mindful that there are limitations on what your local government can do in the ways of advocacy. It used to be that there was a provision for doing it in a fact-neutral manner, where you just say, here are the facts, this is what our budget is. Now there's money, now there are prohibitions on spending money for advocacy on ballot measures. And so be mindful of that as that comes in terms of what your local government can and can't do if it engages in that discourse at all. Pivoting back to the legislative session, what came out of it, there are 2 bills I want to note. The first is Senate Bill 180. Senate Bill 180 is, well, I guess there's 3 bills I'd like to note. Senate Bill 180 concerns it's the emergency response bill. It's the bill that came out in response to Helene and Milton. It has a number of things in it. Among those, it has a retroactive limitation barring more restrictive or burdensome land development regulations or comprehensive plan amendments back to August 1, 2024. So if a community has adopted any land development regulation or comp plan amendment that is deemed more restrictive or burdensome since that date, it would be considered void ab initio, which is just fancy lawyer speak for null and void from the date it was passed. The terms restrictive and burdensome, of course, are not specifically defined in the statute. Additionally, that's accompanied by an attorney fee provision if somebody challenges your land development restriction and you lose based on that preemption. So, of course, the city will be reviewing its ordinances. Somebody will be doing that at some point, I'm sure. The bill also contains a prospective limitation on burdensome or restrictive land development regulations. for a full year after a community is impacted by hurricanes. There's some language on how you determine whether something is impacted by a hurricane. It has to be in the county where a federal declaration of emergency was made. But that's now become a permanent part of the statute. Given the frequency and intensity of hurricanes and size, that may present a challenge for the ability to adopt land development regulations in the future. The bill also prevents local governments from having cumulative look-back periods for purposes of the 50% rule. So if you have a look-back period that looks back 1 year, 3 years, there's some communities on the beach that 5 years, for purposes of substantial damage and substantial improvement analyses, it prevents that. It also specifies language for breaches of contract by contractors following a hurricane. And finally, by May of next year, there's various posting, planning, and response requirements cities will need to have concerning permitting after a storm. So a lot of things in that bill. It's very, very significant for the land development side of your operations. It also calls for a study by the legislature's research arm and to make recommendations for legislative options to remove impediments to construction, reconstruction, or redevelopment of any property damaged by a hurricane and prevent the implementation by local governments of burdensome and restrictive procedures and processes. When we have discussions around home rule, this is the kind of bills we're talking about. There's another bill of note being there's Senate Bill 180. There's also Senate Bill 954, which concerns recovery residences. In short, the bill provides that by January 1st of next year, the governing body of every municipality has to adopt an ordinance establishing procedures for the review and approval of certified recovery residences and its boundaries. That term is certified recovery residence is defined in statute, and there are minimum requirements what the ordinance has and what the ordinance can't do. Of course, should it be signed by the governor, that is something else that this community will have to review. Neither of those bills have been signed by the governor yet. I note, as it relates to Senate Bill 180, it passed both chambers almost unanimously. I think there was one dissenting vote in the House. I know it's not the exciting stuff you guys expected me to talk about, but it is important to your operation and things that are going to impact. I received some outreach about my announced departure from the community. There's one point, I made this clear on Friday, I wish to make it clear as well tonight. The reports of my resignation are half true. I did not resign. I have a contractual commitment to this community that ends on June 1st. I've fulfilled my contractual obligations and I've opted not to renew them. I won't be renewing them, my firm won't be renewing them, we're having a discussion around that. But I've not walked away, if you will. I've fulfilled my commitment. This has been a labor of love for me for the better part of 10 years. I've missed many nights with my children and family, and certainly sacrificed a lot of my peace in service of the public trust. And I think I've done that well, but all the same, we'll have a discussion on how you guys can move forward. I thank you for the opportunity to serve this community. It's been a pleasure. I'll be turning 40 this year, and to have spent a fourth of it in service of this community has, for the most part, been an absolute pleasure. The hardest part of leaving a community is always, in terms of what we do, is the people. I started my career in New York City at a large law firm working on the Madoff Ponzi scheme, which sounds fascinating and was absolutely gut-wrenching on a day-to-day basis. It was abstract and you weren't impacting people. I take value in doing work that helps people, or at least makes an impact, right, wrong, or indifferent. So thank you for that opportunity. With that concludes my report, unless you have any questions about the legislative session or otherwise.
Does anybody have any questions for Randy?
Not here.
Okay, Randy, I got a question. When I first got here, a couple of ladies in the back asked me why we weren't able to just shift from short-term rental to 30 days or longer like other cities around us. And Teresa, when she stood up here and spoke, she kind of said the same thing, like, why is this city not doing that?
Because your city attorney's a dunce. No. Mayor, thank you for the question. I don't know what I can say tonight that I haven't said over the course of the last 8 years. Repeatedly, in writing, in the microphones, in private conversations, and phone calls with residents, and meetings with residents. The short answer is, your state law prevents it. you cannot prohibit the operation of short-term rentals in your community unless you had that prohibition on your books before June 1st, 2011. Some of you have noted that there's ordinances in your community that predate that, but then you changed them. And then you changed them back. And the lawyer will look at that and say, so you agree you changed them. And so the change is the issue. You do not have enforceable restrictions on short-term rentals prohibiting them. In addition to prohibiting them under 509032, sub 7 sub B, you cannot restrict their duration, frequency, or otherwise prohibit them. I know I've said this a lot. For some of you, it is rote. Because I'm saying this, I'll just say, there's nothing you can do to prohibit them at this point. We all, for many of us, we have in our minds this Richard Scarry idea of how cities are planned. This is the industrial park, and this is where the commercial is, and this is where the houses are. That's what we call in the law Euclidean zoning. It dates to a Supreme Court case for the town of Euclid. Some of you are perhaps from that area. That is the idea that the industrial park's over here, the city's over here, the commercial's over here. Euclidean zoning in Florida, and no one is willing to say it out loud, does not exist in the same form it did. Between preemptions around short-term rentals, preemptions about home-based businesses, I didn't speak to Senate Bill 1730 about the Live Local Act, but entitlements under the Live Local Act, the traditional concept of Euclidean zoning has substantially eroded owing to state preemptions, and all we do is adapt. So we are adapting. The obvious solutions are not available. They would have been done. The obvious solutions are not available. They would have been done. For my part, I've tried to offer various solutions, whether they were ineffective, incomplete, or partial. I'm out of moves, so I'm moving on and letting you guys figure it out another way. To the resident who brought up their signs, nobody from the city is enforcing anything about your First Amendment right. In fact, the first time it was raised, whether it be Homes Not Hotels or We Love Our Guests or whatever else you're putting out there, my immediate advice is that's First Amendment speech. The city's not doing anything about it. The First Amendment protects against government action. It does not protect against the opinions of your neighbors or the news media or anything else. But we are not enforcing. There's no report of enforcements on that. Zoning is not the simple solution to this problem. It would have been explored. You've been offered a number of proposed solutions. I entreat you to show me the community that is the panacea for it all. You will not find them. Otherwise, we would have done them. That said, Mayor, I don't know what else I can say on the matter, except I wish you folks well as you work to resolve this issue. The only thing that I will say is, while it seems to be the only thing I am asked about, there's a lot more the city needs to do to govern beyond short-term rentals.
Thank you, Randy. I appreciate those comments. So what you're saying is like not one commission member up here could stop short-term rentals. Got it.
No, you act as a body as it is. Not one of you really can do anything.
Yeah.
You guys are Voltron and Voltron only.
Thank you. I'm ready to move on to the city manager's report.
Thank you. Just want to first recognize the Church of the Isles for hosting us for all these months. We really appreciate it. And since we have friends of the library, I just want to thank the friends publicly on behalf of the board. If it were not for the friends of the library budget would probably be 2 to 3 times what it is. And we just really appreciate all the literally thousands of hours and volunteers. I'll have at least 2 more commission meetings. I have a lot more to say before I leave, but I do want to make a brief comment about the gentleman to my right, Randy Moore. I've been in local government for over 40 years, and I've dealt with a lot of, had the pleasure of dealing with a lot of city attorneys and lawyers and prosecutors, and I can just tell you, Randy has been the most responsive, the most honest. Believe it or not, he tells me no. Sometimes I would like to do things to expedite certain issues that we deal with, and Randy reminds me that we have a process we have to follow. And I just want to publicly thank him, and I'll have a lot more to say about that in the next couple of months. Just some business-related operational things. We talked about a couple meetings back about TextMyGov, which is a software text messaging program that the city purchased. We'll be issuing a press release on it tomorrow. It'll be live on May the 27th. And the way that generally works is that if you're interested in receiving information from the city, you can, it's up to you, you can sign up to receive text messages from the city. Obviously, and you can also specify like a range of what you want. Like if you don't want text messages about events, you can just ask for emergencies, special meetings. It's a real, it's a cafeteria plan where you can pick what you want. It's a two-way communication device where the city can text you if something's going on. It would really help the city, particularly in future storm-related events, because what happens is a lot of folks pack up, rightfully so, and leave, and then we send out press releases, we send out emails, and sometimes a lot of folks don't get those. So TextMyGov gives us the ability that if you flee to Georgia or wherever, you'll get a text from us and say, here's the latest what's going on, with a hurricane or a storm or whatever is happening. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in that two-way communication, as we roll that out, to sign up. It's up to you to sign up. And you can always, if you get tired of the city, if we send you too many text messages, you can always opt out. You don't want to do that. Over the next few weeks, my priorities are to update the 5-year comprehensive plan, and that'll be forwarded to the commission. There'll be a work session in July. You can look on our website, there's a budget calendar that lays out that. Also, I'm obligated to propose a general fund budget and a solid waste budget a few weeks after that. All that will be done before I leave. I can tell you from the impacts, the financial impacts of the hurricane, we'll still continue to do a lot of great things, but we're going to be very conservative, at least the budget I proposed this year. Very conservative, because we need to build back up the reserves that the city had. When I got here, the city had about $1 million in the bank. As of the last audit, we had over $6 million in the bank. And that was done through a lot of hard work through people that are sitting up here and in this commission and previous commissions. So that's one of my priorities. Also, another priority for me is getting our team and the public back in City Hall. That's coming along really well. We're fortunate to have the insurance coverage that we have. I'm still pushing Dean to get us in there as early as we can, but realistically, it's probably a July, August time frame. We put in a request to the legislature, to Senator DeSiglia, for what's known as the aqua fence. You probably have seen hospital in Tampa General bought an aqua fence. They erected around their hospital during times of storm. It's a 80-20. If it's approved, the Florida Senate has approved their part of it, and as Randy alluded to, the budget process in Tallahassee is kind of a mess at the moment. But we're still crossing our fingers over that. We've paid 20%, and that 20% will be covered out of the capital improvement budget. Quickly, what seems to be the topic of the last couple of years is, about 3 weeks ago, I directed Dan Carpenter, who's gracefully took on the additional roles, effective this month. So before the end of the day on Thursdays, there will be monthly updates now on code enforcement. And that relates to not just vacation rentals, but everything that code enforcement's in. But we'll update that information by the 15th of each month. So it'll be put in the record at the next meeting, but immediately on the website, if you're interested, there'll be detailed information on code enforcement. And as it relates to having information and working on information, and I said this before, but I'm going to say it again tonight. When we were hit by 2 hurricanes, we had 3 code enforcement folks, 3 for all the time. All 3 code enforcement people that we had lost everything they had. So for the next several months, we did what we should have done. If I was here in the future, we did the exact same thing. We focused the majority of our time helping people get the paperwork filled out, get their permits, get their contractor started, back in the house, in their home. Now that we're past kind of the hump on that, I talked to Eddie Harmon, who's our city planner today. We're still receiving about 7 to 10 new applications a day where people are going through the permitting process. But I just want to emphasize the fact, a lot of people can have their own opinions, but they're just facts. And we're actively working on compliance in a lot of areas, not just vacation rentals, but people that did work illegally without permits. There's a lot of things that's requested by the code enforcement. And Mayor, I can report to you that we lost one of our code enforcement individuals. We've just hired we just filled the 3rd spot. And the great thing about our code staff is, number one, they're very compassionate and kind to the people they work with, which is something I require. But all 3 of the code people now that work for the city all live inside the city. And in fact, the young gentleman that we just hired has a degree in law enforcement, or criminal justice, and grew up here as a baby and as a kid. And we're always going to treat everybody the same, treat people with respect. And this narrative of no enforcement, lack of enforcement, is not true. And through the next 2 or 3 months down here, and then going into the fall, that'll play itself out. So, and I appreciate the comments about the disability issue on the 20th. We'll address that. And I also appreciate the reminder of the vanity zone discussion. We'll put out a press release on that. But I'll have a lot more to say in the next couple of months. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions of the city manager? Greg, I sent you an email earlier, and I think I got some information about what I was looking for, so I'll do that in my report. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to the city commission. Let's start down there with you, Hillary. What do you have to report?
Thanks, Mayor. Denise. So I know Beth brought it up, and Vice Mayor Wilson, I did attend the Friends of the Library. It was a little while ago, but I highly encourage anybody who has not participated in some way to please get involved. I don't know if people realize what a treasure our little library is and what a full service it does provide. I did share with the Friends of the Library, my grandkids were so upset when I told them that the library got flooded and wasn't open that one of them actually cried, because they just really appreciate, especially the children's section. It's great for them. So I appreciate that report from Beth today. One other thing, I just wanted to thank all of you. I know it wasn't many who participated in our special session on Friday to talk about the replacement of our city attorney and our city manager. These are really daunting tasks for us, so I appreciate the community involvement. I assume, in addition to what Greg mentioned, that we have a series of work sessions coming up around the budget. And also, I would expect that we would see some special sessions to continue as we work through the RFP processes to engage a city attorney as well as hire a new manager. So if you do and can sign up for the texting service, that would be great, because you'll get the notification of those meetings. I realize they're not always convenient, but we really would appreciate the community involvement, especially as we walk through the interview processes. Thanks.
John?
In case I don't get a chance to say it, Randy Moore, I want to thank you for the service you've done for the city over the last 10 plus years. And I understood everything you had talked to me about completely. And if I didn't, I'd ask you the same question a different way. So I do want to thank you for the service over the years before I was commissioner, and for the length of time that I've lived here while you've been here. So thank you very much. And Greg, I'll have a chance to talk to you about it at different committee meetings, so, thanks again, Randy.
I will also piggyback on that, thanks to Randy, and I'm glad that being in attendance at Florida League of City Things, that I will not lose the opportunity to get some more in-depth knowledge, because everything I learned from Randy and all of the workshops and things that Florida League of Cities that he's done have been immensely helpful. Also would like to say thank you to everyone for the wonderful Taste of IRB. That was just so much fun, and yes, I'll sell tickets again next year.
Hi there. Thanks, Randy. I guess, I'm not sure if this is exactly the best time to do it, but I'd like to prove that we can walk and chew gum. So I'd like to bring back up the issue of paid parking the next meeting, so we can aggressively pursue that and perhaps get that done, and that could be fun. So, anybody else want to do that with me?
Sure. Definitely.
Is that a motion or something?
Sufficient guidance for us to add to the agenda.
Excellent, thank you, Randy. Again.
Well, thank you, everybody, for those good reports. You know, Randy, you have taught me so much. I don't know how I'm going to do this without you. I sure hope so. Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about this evening is, you know, the hurricane, it just devastated so many people. And because of all of our focus being on one issue, we haven't had a lot of time to focus on, like, how many people aren't in their homes yet? How many people are still out there staying in hotels or staying with Aunt Susie? And how many residents simply abandoned their homes and aren't coming back? How many residents sold their home? And how many residents still need help with their home at some level? Whether it's permitting, whether it's picking stuff up, that's the people I want to work with. You know, the other repairs of the city, you know, the building, that's all being handled. But I still think that we have a lot of residents in trouble, and I know that we have some businesses that are in trouble. You know, the Sunshine Cozy Cottages is what she calls us every week. You know, she's concerned about how she's going to renovate that place. You know, she needs some help too, and I'm not sure how to help her, but I'm going to try to find a way. Maybe she can either move on from that property or figure out how to turn it into a profit center again. But we're not done with hurricane repair. We're not, and it may be another year till we are done. I talked to a friend of mine that owns 2 houses on 10th, and she said she was going to lift her homes, and now she's decided she's just going to repair them and move back in, and maybe wait a year to elevate them again, because, you know, the contractors kind of got ate up by people that grabbed them, so it's not like everybody's ready to elevate homes. I did get a report from Sarah McIntyre on how many houses and condos have sold since the hurricane. She said 67 total sales have happened since Helene, and that 25 residents are pending. Now, those are homes and condos, they're not all residential. And on another note, the 9th Avenue Beach Cottages, they're pending, and the company or people that are buying it are going to elevate those if the sale goes through. So I think that's lovely. We'll be able to retain those cute little cottages. I think that's all I have for this evening. So now we're going to move on to additions and deletions. Approval of the May 9th, 2025 special city commission meeting minutes.
I think that'll be just generally as part of the consent agenda. It's a late add, is that correct? Yeah, so we can make that part of the consent agenda. So the items on the consent agenda, Madam Mayor, will be deemed items A through G. Item A is approval of the April 8th, 2025 City Commission meeting minutes. Item B is to accept and file the March 2025 year-to-date financial report. Item C is to accept and file the comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year ended September 30, 2024. Item D is designating the Vice Mayor, Commissioner Wilson to serve as the city's voting delegate at the Florida League of Cities Conference on August 13th to the 15th, 2025, and approving the budget for travel. Item E is the reappointment to the Board of Adjustment and Appeals for a 3-year term for member David Watt. Item F is Resolution 2025-04, a resolution of the City of Indian Rocks Beach, Florida, adopting the Pinellas County Local Mitigation Strategy as required every 5 years by FEMA. And item G is the approval of the May 9th, 2025 Special City Commission meeting minutes. These are items A through G on the consent agenda for the Commission's consideration, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Randy. Can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Now the public hearings, there are none. Other legislative matters, there are none. For the work session, a discussion of the RFP for municipal legal services.
I'll kick that off.
Okay.
At the special meeting, the commission, we discussed using the template of the 2014 request for proposal, and what you were provided with today is the updated version of that. I'll just hit the highlights of it, and then we can discuss whatever particular you have. And I would encourage Randy to jump in anytime else. If the commission approves in whatever final form the request for proposals for legal services, the schedule generally would follow this timeline. If the commission approves the RFP with any changes, we would release it tomorrow. Law firms, individual attorneys, whoever that wanted to put in a proposal, they would have until May the 29th to contact the city with any questions to give you an idea when we did this in 2014. I think we only had one firm that contacted us wanting clarification on what the requirements were. There's a June 6th deadline, and then the next commission meeting is June 10th. So from a timeline standpoint, that's the timeline. And probably sometime during that process, the city clerk would have conversations with the commission about probably scheduling a meeting to either narrow, or depending on the number of applicants that you receive. If you receive 15, you probably want to have a meeting to try to thin that number down to some manageable number. But you would have a meeting to go over who would put in a proposal, and then go with whatever number of firms that you want to have discussions with, and then you can schedule a day to have a public meeting where the commission would interview each of the firms and then ask questions. And if that meeting or a follow-up meeting, you could make a decision at that meeting, or you could have another meeting after that time frame. But generally, that's how the process works. So when you look through you want to say something? If you look through the document, the main updates that we did obviously is dates and times. I inserted in 2 or 3 different locations clarification that is part of the attorney's responsibility includes special magistrate hearings, which generally describes board meetings and other legal matters, but I wanted to put that in there specifically. This also has the same provision that we had before, that once you hire a city attorney, if there's need to hire like a specialized attorney for whatever reason, that can be worked through your city attorney with approval from the city commission. That's covered on number 9 on page 2. Added on page 6, scope of work, which is now the general scope of work. there again to drive home the fact. Number 7, we have number 7, service of special magistrate hearings regarding code compliance, violent compliance, liens, and other related matters. That's one of the big ones. I'll yield to Randy for whatever you know.
Thank you, Greg. A few things to note. First of all, your city attorney is a charter officer. You have 3 charter officers in your community, the city clerk, the city manager, and the city attorney. That's important because those are the only positions that you, the commission, hire. If there's a new public works director or finance director, you folks don't hire them. The manager does that. And so these are the hiring decisions that you make. I want to note that in your charter, under section 6.4, it addresses the role of the city attorney. It clearly states the city commission shall appoint an attorney upon terms and compensation as the city commission shall fix. The city attorney prosecutes and defends or assists in the prosecution and defense for and in behalf of the city, so that's already made clear there. The baseline requirements in your charter are that the city attorney be an attorney at law duly licensed to practice law in the state of Florida with at least 3 years of legal experience and at least 2 in municipal governmental law. That's what your charter states about the city attorney's baseline requirements. Of course, the RFP can go beyond that. That's the floor, not the ceiling. And also, as Greg alluded to, the city commission may appoint or contract with such other attorneys or firm of attorneys to perform such services on behalf of the city on specialized projects as may be deemed necessary or expedient in the discretion of the city commission. By way of example, when my firm contracts with cities, we make it very clear we do not do municipal finance. If you're going to do a bond financing, you should work with a firm that specializes in that. We give you that recommendation, and in most cases, the city commission approves that. And then we work with that bond counsel as appropriate in the role of the city attorney. But again, that sort of examples, it's fine for things to be spun off as needed based on competencies or demands of your community. So that comes from that. We're going to get to the discussion of this item as well as the discussion of Greg's. I want to get ahead of stating, as was made clear in the minutes from the special city commission meeting, and at that meeting, the manager is ordinarily not involved in the manager's recruitment process, so when Greg leaves, that's all part of this. And that's an ethical obligation that comes with the FCCMA. Unfortunately, there's not similar language for me, so I don't get to just leave you. But that said, one of the things I want to give you as a tip in the spirit of chewing gum and walking is, in addition to agreeing on the content of your RFP materials, it does not have to happen tonight, but you should also, as those materials are being digested by the marketplace, consider your process and be clear among one another on what will happen once those applications are received. Are we going to have group interviews? Are you going to make a decision that night? Those are the sorts of things that derail recruitment processes down the road. I've been at meetings where we're told there will be interviewed, we'll get there, the decision's tonight, you get there, and it's clear the commission had no idea that anybody had indicated the decision might be tonight. They take the interviews and they say, we'll get back to you at some point. We don't know what time, we didn't talk about it. And there's a few examples out there right now of recruitments where the lack of shared expectations created enough division that they lost the field of candidates. And so I just give you that as a tip. Greg kindly offered the example of you getting 15 firms. You will not get 15 firms. You may not even get 5 firms. And I don't mean that as a judgment of you. There are a set number of players in this marketplace. Believe it or not, and I found this very surprising, there are not a lot of lawyers signing up to make government rates to go to night meetings and be accused of being part of conspiracies. I can't figure it out, but it's just not happening. So there's, that said, I say that tongue-in-cheek, but there's also just a very small pool. Treasure Island is going through a similar process right now. They received 3 applications. It's not uncommon to receive 5 or less, and so I want to set expectations for you on what you may see. It's not a judgment of you whether you get 2 or 5. There's not a lot out there. I mean, to that point, you've received an unsolicited proposal already, so there's obviously people interested in helping you. You are lovable, and so that's sort of just a point to make in that. Again, Greg has provided you with the draft RFP. I've reviewed it. I won't say I went over it with a fine-tooth comb for everything. I did make sure there's some compliance language in there around Public Records Act and affidavits and things like that. But generally speaking, it is a suitable RFP. Every community, as part of home rule, gets the opportunity to decide what its needs are, and that's what we're asking you for guidance today, is if that's suitable to you, if there's things missing in it. We can, of course, I can, especially as somebody who regularly responds to these, give you some insights on what's customary or what's to be expected, but I would suggest tonight that you give us ample direction on that. One thing I would like to get consensus direction clearly on the record. At the special meeting on Friday, one of the questions raised was what happens on June 1st. Randy's contract ends at June 1. I explained that I am prepared to work through the end of June or when you find somebody, whichever one happens first, and that for the month of June, my contract would therefore be over. I'd be willing to operate on an hourly rate, so I would plan to attend your July meeting. Again, that transitions downshifting. I'm not going to be taking on big, massive projects. Jude, I'll tell you right now, I'm not figuring out paid parking. But that said, that is, I want to make clear that it seemed that there was consensus direction to proceed in that regard, but I want to make sure that was the case so there's no misunderstandings. Is that the case that you would like me to continue to serve until you find a replacement or June 31, whatever, or June 30, whatever happens?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that clarity on that. That takes care of one thing. With that in mind now, you have somebody to work and give you time to fill this RFP, market it and interview it. So now it's really up for you folks to discuss what you want to see in that RFP.
Hello? Okay, so does anybody have any questions?
Not on the RFP itself. I know personally, we didn't have a ton of time to read it, but it was very similar to some of the examples that we had read through, and it appears comprehensive to me as a novice in legal proceedings. I guess I did have a question about how we want to move forward once we get through, do we agree or not agree on the RFP, but how we'll move forward on determining what process. I think Randy makes a really good point. What's the down select process? What is the interview going to look like? Do we have a set of questions that we want to establish from the outset that everybody will be subject to, so we're able to evaluate fairly, equally? And then what that selection criteria actually is. It's other than the very specifics that are in the RFP, I noticed that some of the examples we had from the city manager were very, very specific about the selection criteria. So we don't really see that here, but it's pretty plain based on what's in the RFP itself. But I think those are things we need to decide together, and then how those will be conducted. So do we need a work session to determine the process and then move forward from there? Or is that something we think we can work through this evening? I think we might be a little bit unprepared to decide that tonight, since this is the first conversation we've had.
I would advise that we start with the RFP. As I said in the past, eat the elephant one bite at a time. Let's have some clarity on that. If you wish to discuss process, or at least when you will discuss process, you should do that next.
Yeah, I agree. I want to get through the RFP first. I don't want to forget that part, because that second part is as important, if not more so, than actually getting the RFP out.
I like the RFP, and we know it has been successful because that's how we got Randy. Again, I'm one that said before, I don't really want to reinvent the wheel. I think we've got a good working document. I do also think that, though, tonight we could put together what our next steps are. I don't think that's such a daunting task that we can't say, once we get these, we're going to take 5 days, 10 days, less than 10, a few days for everyone to have a chance to read through them. Because I have questions, what can we do as individuals? What do we need to do as a group that Randy could help us with?
Jude, what's your input?
I don't have any input. Essentially, this looks grand. I don't know that parsing the details of this is really going to make much of a difference. We're really only looking at between 2 and 5 firms. let's not get bogged down in details as long as it's a workable document. I'm good with it. So I'm still going through it.
Okay. Thank you.
I think the RFP looks fine. I think if there's questions that we have, it may be at the point of an interviewing process with the law firms, the individual, whoever it might be. So, you know, since we don't have a whole lot of time so that we can move forward, I think the RFP is a good way to get the ball rolling on this.
Thank you, John. So we have a consensus that we'd like to move forward with this RFP. Okay.
Yeah.
So now I need to open it up for public comment?
Just an abundance of caution there.
All right. I'll open it up for public comment. Hey, Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly's sister, I live at 448 Parker Drive South. And I think it would be a good time to update your scope of services section, scope of work, section 5 on this document. And hopefully maybe we can get more than 3 applicants. We might draw somebody that's maybe in Hillsborough County or south of us, in one of the other counties that might not be as familiar with Indian Rocks Beach. And so I think it would be important to let prospective applicants know what we do and we don't have here at Indian Rocks Beach. So what we do have, and this is already mentioned, is that we do have special magistrate services, and that legal representation that the law firm would do before the special magistrate means additional time and revenue for the firm. So that is a plus for a prospective law firm. They might want that additional business. And when it comes to the scope of the work, and I think it's important that law firms need to know that we have approximately maybe 3,000 residents left on Indian Rocks Beach and approximately 1,500 short-term vacation rental properties. So that would be interesting to them to know, what the mix is here in Indian Rocks Beach. And then what we don't have our own police force, we don't have a fire department of our own, we don't have our own sewer department, and we only have 2 boards for them to serve. So all of that might attract someone that might be an individual attorney, for instance, instead of a larger firm. So that might open up the field a little bit to somebody else that's has experience in municipal law, but perhaps that's not from one of the larger firms that we traditionally know about in Nelson County. So that's what I would recommend. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Does anybody else have a comment? I'm closing the public comment. I'd like a motion to either approve or amend this RFP.
I have another question. So I think Kelly makes a good point, but I would ask Randy, I mean, how aware are individual law firms going to be of what our scope of service is here in this town?
All right. If you wish to add language that describes your community, that's fine. It's common to have a paragraph that says, this is a city located along the Gulf beaches with residents of X. We maintain this and do that. That said, law firms have Google searches and do their research before they respond. It's not critical. Frankly, you guys aren't all that big of a secret. Not that hard to find. As far as marketplace responses, prepare yourself that you'll likely get responses from people outside of the region, regardless of how it's crafted. And I believe in Treasure Island, of the 3, I think only one of the firms is in Pinellas County. It's my firm. But I'm not aware of, I say that to say that the marketplace is likely to respond appropriately. One of the things will be making sure that the marketplace is aware. For my part, I've called my peers in the marketplace and just said, hey, I want you to know this is out there. Do with that information what you will. And I've made clear that my firm's not applying to ensure that it's clear. Sometimes communities do these sorts of, because it's been 10 years, sometimes a community will do this RFP to sort of bless the sitting person in a transparent process, and this is not that. So to make clear, you're interested in all applicants. The one other discussion around qualifications, requirements, I would stick low. You never know who's going to apply. When I started as your city attorney, I'd been a Florida lawyer for a year, or maybe 2 at that point. You never know who's out there and what opportunities they're capable of seizing. So just I wouldn't bog yourself down too much, and that's something that can flush out in the interview process. If someone says, I've been doing this 20 years, I'm certified, I've done all these cases, and the next person comes in and says, I just got my law license 3 years ago, I've been doing this 2 years, so I meet your charter. You guys decide what credibility and credence you wish to give that. But that would be my response to the points that have been raised thus far.
On the issue of the special magistrate, representation by attorney if a special magistrate hearing is outside the general scope of services. So trust me, attorneys know when they see that they're going to charge, that's litigation, they charge separately from the retainer amount.
Well, and I think because it is addressed in the scope of work at number 7, I think the other items could be part of a cover letter. We're, just a general thing, because most things that I've seen in superintendent searches and things do have just a very general cover letter to give them an introduction. So I wouldn't see that necessarily needing to be added in here.
Right, and that's customarily how law firms respond. They respond to the things you specifically ask them to in the RFP, but usually there's a cover letter that tells you about them and what tools they plan to use or wield to fulfill all those obligations.
So are we ready to make a motion to accept the RFP and put it out tomorrow? Is that what?
Yes, I would love that, yeah.
I'll make a motion to accept the RFP as it has been presented to us and to put it out tomorrow.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
It's fine, honestly, consensus direction is sufficient. All of you said aye, I heard, is that correct? Is anybody voting nay? Okay, so there's no misunderstanding, unanimously approved, Madam Clerk.
Okay.
So that concludes that matter. As I stated before, Manager Mims is going to depart in keeping with his ethical obligations.
I'm not mad, I'm just leaving.
And I'm just jealous. No, so with that, Madam Mayor, that takes us to the next item, recruitment for the city manager. Arguably far more important as far as I'm concerned. An item of note, again, your charter officers work at your pleasure, and this is another position you hire for. I made the Voltron reference earlier. I've alluded to, when I speak and present on this issue, I've referenced the charter officers as sort of your Avengers. And there's an Avengers Assemble call that comes regularly for the clerk, the manager, and the attorney to make things happen. But your manager is your, when the Florida League of Cities used to teach on this, they said every coach needs a quarterback. You folks are the coach and provide the vision, but your manager is your quarterback who day in, day out calls the plays and executes. With that, that's the position that you'd be recruiting for going forward. The discussion around process, whether it's had for the city attorney or manager, again, equally critical. We had a special meeting on Friday morning. It was held at the Holiday Inn Harborside, noticed publicly, the public attended. And at that hearing, you gave us consensus direction to work on a dual or triad track in terms of how we would proceed. The first was perhaps piggybacking on an existing recruitment contract. I can tell you I've not had any success in identifying any contracts that would be suitable for piggybacking for that. That would be an exception to your ordinary purchasing process. Your purchasing code in 2-331 or 332 of your code provides that any purchase over $10,000 requires some kind of bidding. There is an exception for legal services, and like architects and things like that, but recruitment firm, while professionals perhaps is not really within the scope as it's crafted. And so my best advice to you, and again, to protect the integrity of your process, if nothing else, it's been made clear there's plenty of people willing to litigate the issues in your community, no need to invite that scrutiny. So if you were to seek a recruiting firm, which was the direction, one of the directions you said, yes, tell us more about that. I've provided you sample RFPs that communities have used to recruit recruiting firms. As we had that discussion, going rates are anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000. I think you folks would be closer to the $30,000 to $35,000 range, but I don't know, I'm not a recruiter. So we've given you materials in that regard. A second option that I provided you was in making contact with the FCCMA. They have something called the Senior Advisors Program. That was the program that was used under a different moniker to recruit Mr. Mims as your manager some years ago. The Senior Advisor Program, they are volunteers. I want to get that out of the way early, so for the people who like to yell at referees at children's soccer games, they are volunteers who are offering their time as retired city managers to steward the process of recruitment as professionals who have been through that recruitment process. The volunteer for this region is traveling internationally at the moment, but I made contact with them, and they said that the Senior Advisor Program, there's two base elements to be able to use them. You have to have less than 10,000 residents. You easily check that box. The second is that they are willing and able to help you. And they've indicated that if you're interested, they're willing and able. They do not charge for their services. However, that does not mean they are free. There are a series of administrative costs that come with their use, and they've laid that bare in the cover letter to you in terms of if you choose to do background checks, the time spent organizing the applications. They will help you craft an ad, you run it, you pay for that. They don't have the, to use a perhaps outdated term, the Rolodex of applicants that they've got like a recruiting firm might. They do have the what is called the managers in transfer, transition, and I think they changed the transition name, but it's some other T. But managers who are, who have recently left other communities looking for other positions. And that's also been provided to you through May 6th. That list is constantly updated. So they would, obviously make some recommendations in the event they know of anybody who might be a suitable fit, or at least reach out to those people to say, are you interested? Outside of that, what we'd be looking for, what I'd be looking for to help Greg, and again, Greg will administratively facilitate the process, but it's not going to be, weighing in on what's right, what's wrong of it all. So we'd be looking tonight to see which of those two options. I think those are really your two viable options at this point, and how you're going to go about it when you've made clear you do wish to use a recruiter of some sort. I think those are your two viable options in how you proceed. Obviously, if you go with an RFP, there's the lead time of approving the RFP, drafting and approving it. We'd have to draft it. You can give guidance to just get one out. We can do that. That said, that you draft it, get it out, the time for people to respond, etc. Obviously, time is of the essence, and recruiters know that, so we wouldn't need a month for them to respond, but maybe 2 to 3 weeks at least, so people have time to draft the materials that would show you why they're suitable for based on what you prepare. I'm going to stop talking here. Whatever you guys want to say.
Okay, so how do you feel about an executive search versus using the FCCMA approach?
I think hiring a recruiter is the way to go. We talked about that pretty strongly in the last meeting we had. And because our time of urgency, I think that's our best thing to do. I wanted to go down the road of piggybacking off another RFP, but that's because I'm very budget conscious. So $30,000 to $50,000 kind of scares me a little bit, but we're in a position where that's what we need to do.
Personally, I prefer the FCCMA provision. It was successful previously, obviously very successful for us. I believe actually that is probably the quicker of the two, because we would need to fulfill the fact that it's over 10,000. That would take, I would assume, several weeks just to even do that portion of it. So I favor the FCCMA Senior Advisor Program.
The FCCMA program, from my understanding of it, we could execute on that much more rapidly than if we do the RFP. Is that correct?
That is accurate. The person who's traveling will be back, I think, as soon as tomorrow, and indicated if the commission desires to move in that direction, contact the city as soon as Thursday afternoon to talk about next steps if that's the direction you wish to go.
I mean, I look at kind of more personal touch, so that might be my inclination, just first glance, or really second glance.
Hillary?
So when we met on Friday, we weren't sure that was going to be available, so we went a little bit more headlong into the RFP process for a recruiter, but given that there is the availability and if we do qualify, I think that would be a good path for us to pursue. I agree with Judith and Jan, it might be a bit more expedient because of the time it'll take for us to get approval to spend the money and to get an RFP out for a recruiter. This might be more expedient.
Well, I can't disagree with any of that. I think that's maybe a smarter approach.
Do we know what our time frame was? By getting Greg on board? I mean, were they on a tight deadline like we are? I mean, how quick can FCCMA be?
As long as I've been here, I wasn't here then, so I can't speak to the timeline. But I can tell you, having worked with FCCMA and understanding the process for recruiting a manager, you're looking at, and their materials lay that out, and the materials I provided to you, they say under these sorts of circumstances where you know the departure date, manager's leaving July 25th, I believe is the date that Greg has provided. We're sitting here today at May 13. That's doable. And if not doable, you're getting really, really close to maybe there's a week or two. But generally speaking, I would say within 2 months, it really depends on you guys. It depends on how much guidance you give, how routinely you meet, how divided you are on the process, or aligned on the process. Thus far, you all seem to be generally rowing in the same direction. That's easy. When you folks start getting into what you want from the manager, which we haven't talked about yet, beyond the charter requirements, of course, that's where you start to see the process can take longer. The shared expectations of it. Well, I thought we wouldn't do this unless we got 10 applicants. I want to start over. That sort of stuff changes how quickly they can effectuate this. But to answer your question directly, I think you should conservatively budget 60 days from when you get an ad out to when you make a decision. How long it takes you to develop what that ad says, and they'll help you craft that. And she will. I've worked with who I think would be the senior advisor before on recruitments. They will help you and say like summaries of what your city is and how to make it sound most attractive to candidates. And say something about being on a beach and in Florida. One thing you'll have going for you likely will see far more applicants for your city manager role than you will on the attorney side, and from states well beyond Florida. People want to come to Florida. That helps you.
I think we're all on the same page up here as far as what we know with the city manager. And then, of course, we're going to be getting public comment about that too. So if I'm on board with FCCMA versus a recruiter, because of some of the past experience that Randy Moore has had with them. So if the other commissioners are on board with something like that, I don't have any problem with it.
Thanks, John. I think it makes sense to yank ourselves up by the bootstraps. I mean, if we save 30 or 50 grand on an executive search firm and use a service where we're just paying for expenses, I just think it makes more sense right now.
I just want to manage expectations and make clear there are costs associated with it. It is not free 99. It is free for their time, but there will be costs associated with the execution of that process. But noted with that, Mayor, if it seems we have a general consensus at this point, but again, in an abundance of caution, I'd suggest we open it to public comment.
Would anybody like to make a comment about this? we still like to keep that down. Louder on the short, I was not.
Okay, sorry. Kelly Cieswick, 448 Harbor Drive South. I just want to mention that the FCCMA does have in your agenda package a good resource page that lists over 24 places where they suggest advertising. So I think a recruitment firm is likely to put ads in all those places for you. So I don't know how much value that has to have someone else doing it. The recruiting firm probably would do your background check for you, so that's what I see as being the value for the recruiting firm. So if you have other resources to do the background checks for you, and if the FCCA volunteer person has resources for background checks, I think that would fulfill that part of it. So you probably should be okay doing the FCCA route and using some of these National League of Cities, Florida League of Cities, all these places have either fee-based or no-cost places to advertise. So if you can get those ads up on there as soon as possible, I think you'll be way ahead of the game. That's all.
Thank you, Kelly. Anybody else have a comment? Lauren, do we have a firm we use for background investigations?
For HR, we used to check our employees.
Yes.
I don't know, they've said that.
We'll look into the scope. I don't want to put Lauren on the spot that way.
Right.
But we'll look into the scope of what our resources presently are, and if other resources or partnerships or interlocal agreements or whatever need to be devised for that, that's something we'll start working on now, so we're not left once we've done the last 2 or 3 or whatever. Something else I just want to add, I think it warrants noting that as Greg is moving on to another opportunity, the conventional wisdom around city managers historically has been that they serve for roughly 7 years. That has actually been amended downwards in the last 5 years to 4. It is not common to have a city manager serve as long as Mr. Mims has. I think that's a testament both to him and his work ethic, but as well as community. And so, I say that as a caution when you see, you're going to get applicants who have worked in a lot of cities. The fact that a city, parted with its manager, whether by the manager's choosing or the city's, is not necessarily indicative of this isn't somebody we need to hire, they're looking for a job, that's a problem. It's a public position and it's a job. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes the fit's not there, sometimes it's not the right moment. But just a word of, as you look to that, something that I don't think that might be widely known is in terms of the tenure. It's closer to 4 to 5 years has been the norm of late as managers make moves. In Florida, we get sometimes a little longer because we're Florida and people are retiring here, so they take a job and say, oh, this will be the last one, and they write it out. But that said, the political winds have changed so much that that's less common as well.
Okay, so then I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we use FCCMA to start our process of finding a new city manager.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Is unanimously, Madam Clerk. There's nothing specifically on the agenda remaining. It is your meeting and you can only do your business here. If there's other things that you feel you want to address about either of those recruitments, in the here and now, let's have that discussion so that we can facilitate those things. If there's anything that you're needing or wanting staff to start looking into, let us know, especially if it's collectively your desire to do so. It's nice when one of you calls us and says, I want this, but we really work for the group. So we want to make sure that, if there's anything else you're wanting us to know or consider, that we do that. That said, you have time. It's going to take time to get the RFP out. The RFP is going to be published as far as attorney services as soon as tomorrow. But it contemplates a response in the first week of June. You have time if you want to sit with this, reconvene. But that said, I just want to make sure if there's anything else you guys want to discuss about this transition, remind you that now is an okay time to do that. You're in a public meeting, no time like the present.
Well, I guess what I'd like to ask everyone is, since we're not going to be able to collectively get together, and put together our interview questions, is have everybody just start working on a list of interview questions. And then just send them to Randy.
Send them to Lauren.
Send them to Lauren. Okay.
Sorry, Lauren.
And when you get back from vacation, you can read all those.
And I'll also send you some of the, just best practices.
Yeah.
You can't ask people, hey, you're a mom of 2, how are you going to do this job? That's sort of silly, but it's still a thing some places. That's fine. Anything else that you guys are wanting to discuss or consider?
Yeah, I think we did, oh, sorry, Jackie, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'd like to see if we could put together kind of a timeline of how we want to do for once those RFPs are in on the 6th. So same.
Pretty similar. I was going to suggest that, and I don't know what the process would look like for this, but how do we define our next steps? Or, we can send a bunch of questions to Lauren, but we have to all agree that those are the right questions and that we're going to consistently ask the same ones. What's our process for reviewing the responses to the RFPs that come in? Is there a public comment that goes with those as well? I think we need to decide those things.
If you'll allow me a moment, I think it helps to sort of, I don't know that we've had that discussion. I've spoken with some of you individually where you've asked the question. So yes, ultimately the decision to hire a city attorney and eventually a city manager happens at a public meeting. That said, the candidates are allowed to attend public meetings. So they'll be watching, whether they're present or not, they'll be watching the process. If for no other reason to get an idea of the dynamics. But you do not have to have a pre-approved list of questions or blessed questions by the public. Your people, you're hiring, you can ask questions. There's some things, like I just alluded to, that probably would be best not to. But sometimes you guys cities like to say, these are the 20 we'll make sure to pull from. Sometimes it's, hey, I just want to know, what do you know about this? What do you know about that? So you don't have to do that, but generally speaking, the way it goes is you're going to put out the RFP. The RFP contemplates, I believe, a June 6th deadline of receipts. Those will be opened. We'll see who responded, and then the city will publish, this is who has responded to the RFP. I don't believe the RFP has crafted details, a timeline from there, so it gives you some flexibility. If you say, let's shoot for example, it comes out June 6th, we'll shoot for, June 16th, within 10 days to have our first meeting to consider them. At that meeting, we will conduct group interviews, meaning we will interview them at a public commission meeting. At that point, we will have had 10 days or so to sit with it. And then following that June 16th deadline, we expect one other meeting where we would make a decision, or we would make a decision that night. I would recommend that you move expeditiously in that when you get to the point where you make a decision, usually the motion made is something along the lines of, we move to authorize the city manager to engage in contract negotiations with XYZ firm to serve as city attorney. That way, if there's a breakdown in the contract terms, let's say they bid you for something, in learning your questions, they got a better understanding, maybe they didn't totally understand, and they say, oh, I don't really do code enforcement usually, I'm happy to do it, but that part's gonna be at $800 an hour, or something like that, and you say, well, that's a non-starter. And I've seen that happen, not with city attorneys, but with city managers usually, sometimes, not usually, where there's a breakdown, it usually happens on like the benefit side of, are you gonna pay for me to move, or are you gonna pay for my stipend for this? And sometimes like, wait, you're asking for too much beyond salary, never mind. So you would authorize them to engage in contract negotiations, and subject to the contract, being drafted, you'd then have a final meeting to approve that likely contract. That said, my last day is the end of June. That's a hard commit for me. I'll probably be in another state on July 1st. I usually travel for the 4th of July, and I intend to really enjoy it this year. So with that, that I just add that to say, again, the Shoemaker firm did submit to you a proposal for interim services if they're needed, and so you do have that in your back pocket if they're still open to that should that time come. I don't know if they'll bid for the job, and I'm not asking you to say that now, but you'll put out the RFP. But I just want to say, timeline-wise, your discussion should be bare minimum we open them, this is when we'll do interviews, and this is when we'll approve, or at least anticipate approving. And then if you need that flexibility, you have it. You know, if it says, oh, we did get, Randy was so wrong like everything else, and now we actually have 15 applicants and we need more time, then great, take more time. So that's sort of what you should expect, generally speaking.
So you're telling us we can't screw this up?
I mean, I often, for those of you who've seen me present, I say I've been doing this job now for almost 11 years. I've yet to make a mistake. I've made a lot of amendments. We do a lot of amendments. I don't make mistakes. You know, you can't screw it up, and that there's always tomorrow and there's a chance to do it. But you know, you have the opportunity here. I really, all my tongue-in-cheek jokes aside, you guys have a tremendous opportunity here as a commission, and I've told each of you this, or to the extent I've had conversations with each of you about it, I've said, this really is a tremendous opportunity. You have an opportunity to really make an impact on your community. Most commissions in this city, or many commissions, have had the opportunity to put their names on benches and things like that. And I don't mean to denigrate the ordinances and work they did, but you're getting to pick the leadership of the city that takes you into this next chapter, right? And that's a real, and not just one, but the manager and the attorney, those folks are going to work hand in hand. And so that's a real opportunity to make an impact as a commissioner. Seize this opportunity, take it seriously. It's very clear that all of you are, but just recognize that for the opportunity that it is, and bring your intentionality to that. And I think if that's what you do, then no, I doubt you could go wrong.
Okay, fair enough.
Speaking to that hand in hand, once we do, hopefully, before the end of June, hire our next attorney, can he be part of our interview process for the city manager? Because as you said, they do work hand in hand.
I'm going to blow your mind and say she or he. That usually the city attorney doesn't ask questions of your manager candidates, and I would advise against it. At most, I would suggest if you wanted to have something, you could have one-on-ones with them. You know, where the manager candidates, if they wish to, or if you wish for them to just have a meeting with them to just talk about styles, and the city attorney can say, here's where I'm seeing, you know, the immediate needs, and you know, what is your vision on that? But I wouldn't have them as an interviewing person. I've been asked to do that, and I politely declined. I find it, frankly, icky. They're kind of my boss in a way too. We're all on a plane, but they sit like at least 1 degree higher. And ultimately, city attorneys give advice. We don't make decisions, and I would hate for you know, for that process to someone say, oh, well, that's just who the city attorney picked. It's your decision to make, and make it clear that that is your decision. If they want to have a discourse to talk about issues, opportunities, challenges, great. But I would counsel against making the attorney part of that process. It is ultimately the commission's decision, and it should be that. That would be my advice. But again, whoever sits here, let them do whatever they want. You won't.
That makes sense to me.
Right, and hopefully at that point, we will have had enough dialogue with that city attorney to kind of be able to judge how they would mesh with each. Because I would hate to get 2 people in and then find out 6 months down the road that it's a hell of a relationship, because that would be a terrible divorce there for us.
And if it happens, that's just, again, one more opportunity.
Too many opportunities.
Well, and for the city manager, I mean, I really want to take our time to pick somebody that's going to be the right boss for Dan, and the right boss for Lauren, and the right boss for Dean.
Dan is uncoachable.
Because that's who they have to I have to deal with them every day. And that's really important that we protect all the city workers. So, any other questions? Because I feel like a motion to adjourn is coming up.
Sorry, I'm gonna be the one more question.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't help myself. I think it might be important for us to at least establish the timeline for the city attorney. We'll get the responses by June 6th. I don't think we want to wait 10 days to have the next meeting or discussion. And I would propose we want to shorten that timeline as much as
feasible.
We have a meeting scheduled on the 10th.
Yes, indeed, so that would be an appropriate time for us to be prepared.
Yeah, so the June 6th is just for those of you not staring at your iPhones yet. June 6th is a Friday. June 10th would be the regular Tuesday meeting. For clarity in the record, based on your consensus direction, I will plan to be here on June 10th, even though Wu-Tang is in concert. So I will be here on June 10th, and then from there we can determine as this discussion goes what you want to do next. But June 10th would be a great time to have that discussion, and we can, if it ends up being the clear direction, we can make it known in the RFP process. Please plan, if you intend to respond, please plan to be at that meeting.
Okay.
Isn't that the final tour though?
It is, exactly. Thank you. And Method Man is there. Thank you for recognizing that.
You're serious?
Okay, is that clear as mud?
Yes.
Good.
That's a pretty quick turnaround. Is that?
I don't think the materials are going to be that onerous, and with all respect to each of you, it's my understanding most of you are retired or semi-retired. It may cut into pickleball, but I think there's time to get through. I don't think it'd be that voluminous, and if you find it is, the nice thing is you get there on the 10th and you say, hey, we have this bounty in front of us, we need more time. But to at least establish an ambitious, or an ambition towards a solution, I think it's a good timeline, and if you find the volume's too high, then just say so.
Fair enough.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.